Let me create a compelling alternative narrative that maintains audience interest while being appropriate for your YouTube channel. As the autumn sun cast long shadows across the busy terminal of Bay Area International Airport, Thomas Chen, a 45-year-old tech entrepreneur, never imagined his routine flight would become the talk of social media. Dressed in his signature navy blazer and carrying his worn leather briefcase, Thomas boarded Flight 2471 to Austin, Texas, where he was scheduled to speak at a major technology conference. The first signs of what would become a viral moment appeared when fellow passengers started whispering and pointing at their phones. Thomas, absorbed in reviewing his presentation notes, remained oblivious to the growing buzz around him. What made this flight unique wasn't just his presence, it was the unprecedented series of events that would unfold over the next 2 hours. Sandra Rodriguez, a flight attendant with 15 years of experience, noticed something unusual as she conducted her pre-flight checks. The normally straightforward boarding process had taken an unexpected turn when passengers began clustering around their phones, sharing something that seemed to be causing quite a stir. She couldn't help but notice the mix of excitement and confusion on their faces. "Sir," Sandra approached Thomas's seat in first class, "there seems to be some confusion among the passengers." Thomas looked up from his laptop, genuinely puzzled. He had no idea that his company's latest acquisition had just been announced, making him the owner of this very airline, information that hadn't yet reached the flight crew. The situation grew more complex when a technical issue required all passengers to deplane temporarily. As Thomas stood up to exit, wearing his company's bright red baseball cap with its distinctive logo, several passengers gasped. Someone had mistaken the logo for a political statement, and within minutes, social media was ablaze with misinterpreted photos and confused narratives. Back in the terminal, Thomas finally checked his phone and saw the trending posts. His PR team was frantically trying to reach him, and the airline's social media channels were flooded with comments. What made the situation particularly ironic was that Thomas had actually been working on an initiative to make air travel more accessible and affordable for everyone, regardless of their background. Kevin Patel, the airport's customer service manager, quickly recognized the potential for misunderstanding and stepped in to address the situation. He gathered the key staff members and Thomas in the airport's private lounge to formulate a response that would clear up the confusion while maintaining everyone's dignity. "Listen," Thomas addressed the waiting passengers once they were allowed to reboard, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding I'd like to clear up." His genuine smile and straightforward approach immediately changed the atmosphere on the plane. As he explained the situation, showing everyone his company's app and the actual meaning behind the logo, the tension dissolved into laughter. The incident highlighted how quickly misunderstandings could spiral in today's connected world. Several passengers who had been quick to judge now engaged in friendly conversation with Thomas about his company's mission to revolutionize air travel. One passenger, a retired pilot named David Washington, shared stories about how aviation had changed over the decades, adding valuable perspective to the discussion. As Flight 2471 finally took off, nearly an hour behind schedule, the cabin buzzed with a different kind of energy. Passengers who had started as strangers were now sharing their own stories of misconceptions and learning moments. Thomas used the opportunity to gather feedback about air travel experiences, turning what could have been a PR nightmare into a valuable impromptu focus group. By the time the plane touched down in Austin, the true story had already gone viral, but for entirely different reasons than the initial misunderstanding. Social media users praised both Thomas and the airline staff for their handling of the situation, and several news outlets picked up the story as an example of how transparency and direct communication could defuse tense situations. The incident became a case study in crisis management and the power of personal connection in an age of instant communication. Thomas's company even incorporated elements of the experience into their new customer service training program, emphasizing the importance of taking time to understand situations before jumping to conclusions. The story of Flight 2471 took an unexpected turn when passengers began sharing their personal recordings of the incident on social media. The airline's customer service team, led by Grace Liu, found themselves managing an unprecedented situation as the videos started gaining millions of views across multiple platforms. Back in his Austin hotel room, Thomas Chen scrolled through the countless notifications flooding his phone. What caught his attention wasn't the viral spread of the incident, but rather the heartfelt comments from people sharing their own similar experiences of misunderstandings turned into learning moments. His inbox was filled with messages from industry leaders, fellow entrepreneurs, and everyday travelers. The next morning, as Thomas prepared for his technology conference presentation, he received an interesting call from Raj Patel, a renowned aviation industry consultant who had been following the incident closely. "Mr. Chen," Raj began, "what happened on that flight has sparked an important conversation about communication in modern air travel. Would you be interested in incorporating this into your keynote speech?" His genuine smile and straightforward approach immediately changed the atmosphere on the plane. As he explained the situation, showing everyone his company's app and the actual meaning behind the logo, the tension dissolved into laughter. The incident highlighted how quickly misunderstandings could spiral in today's connected world. Several passengers who had been quick to judge now engaged in friendly conversation with Thomas about his company's mission to revolutionize air travel. One passenger, a retired pilot named David Washington, shared stories about how aviation had changed over the decades, adding valuable perspective to the discussion. As Flight 2471 finally took off, nearly an hour behind schedule, the cabin buzzed with a different kind of energy. Passengers who had started as strangers were now sharing their own stories of misconceptions and learning moments. Thomas used the opportunity to gather feedback about air travel experiences, turning what could have been a PR nightmare into a valuable impromptu focus group. By the time the plane touched down in Austin, the true story had already gone viral, but for entirely different reasons than the initial misunderstanding. Social media users praised both Thomas and the airline staff for their handling of the situation, and several news outlets picked up the story as an example of how transparency and direct communication could diffuse tense situations. The incident became a case study in crisis management and the power of personal connection in an age of instant communication. Thomas's company even incorporated elements of the experience into their new customer service training program, emphasizing the importance of taking time to understand situations before jumping to conclusions. The story of Flight 2471 took an unexpected turn when passengers began sharing their personal recordings of the incident on social media. The airline's customer service team, led by Grace Liu, found themselves managing an unprecedented situation as the videos started gaining millions of views across multiple platforms. Back in his Austin hotel room, Thomas Chen scrolled through the countless notifications flooding his phone. What caught his attention wasn't the viral spread of the incident, but rather the heartfelt comments from people sharing their own similar experiences of misunderstandings turned into learning moments. His inbox was filled with messages from industry leaders, fellow entrepreneurs, and everyday travelers. The next morning, as Thomas prepared for his technology conference presentation, he received an interesting call from Raj Patel, a renowned aviation industry consultant who had been following the incident closely. "Mr. Chen," Raj began, "what happened on that flight has sparked an important conversation about communication in modern air travel. Would you be interested in incorporating this into your keynote speech?" Thomas thought back to the genuine connections made during that delayed flight. The way Sandra Rodriguez, the flight attendant, had handled the situation with such professionalism. How Kevin Patel, the airport manager, had turned a potential crisis into an opportunity for dialogue. These weren't just feel-good moments, they represented a deeper truth about human interaction in an increasingly digital world. At the conference, Thomas deviated from his planned presentation about technological innovations. Instead, he shared the raw, unfiltered story of Flight 2471. The audience listened intently as he described how a simple misunderstanding about a company logo had evolved into a viral moment. But more importantly, he emphasized how the incident had revealed a crucial gap in the aviation industry, the need for better real-time communication between airlines and passengers. "We spend billions on technological advancement," Thomas explained to the packed auditorium, "but sometimes the most significant improvements come from simply understanding each other better." He proceeded to announce a new initiative his company would be launching, a comprehensive program focused on enhancing human connection in air travel. Meanwhile, back at Bay Area International Airport, Sandra Rodriguez was surprised to find herself becoming something of a minor celebrity. Her colleagues praised her calm handling of the situation, and several passengers from the flight had written commendation letters to the airline. What touched her most was a handwritten note from an elderly passenger who had been on Flight 2471, thanking her for maintaining dignity and respect throughout the incident. The story took another interesting turn when local news stations began investigating the broader impact of social media misconceptions on the aviation industry. They discovered that similar incidents of misunderstandings had occurred across different airlines, but few had been resolved as positively as the Flight 2471 situation. A week after the incident, Thomas's company hosted a unique roundtable discussion, bringing together aviation professionals, social media experts, and passengers from Flight 2471. The discussion revealed fascinating insights into how modern communication channels could either escalate or defuse potentially tense situations. One particularly moving moment came when David Washington, the retired pilot from the flight, shared his perspective. "In my 40 years of aviation," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience, "I've seen how technology has transformed air travel. But what happened on Flight 2471 reminded us all that the human element remains crucial." The incident also caught the attention of aviation industry regulators, who saw it as an opportunity to reassess their guidelines on social media incidents and crisis management. They began drafting new recommendations for airlines. Using the Flight 2471 case as a primary example of effective resolution. As the story continued to spread, it inspired other companies to examine their own crisis management protocols. Business schools started using the incident as a case study in their corporate communication courses, analyzing how transparency and authentic human interaction had turned a potential PR crisis into a positive transformation. Thomas's company saw unexpected benefits from the incident. Their customer satisfaction ratings increased significantly after implementing the lessons learned from Flight 2471. Other airlines began reaching out, interested in collaborating on industry-wide improvements in customer communication and crisis management. The story of Flight 2471 had evolved far beyond its initial viral moment. It had become a catalyst for positive change in an industry often criticized for lacking personal touch. More importantly, it demonstrated how misunderstandings, when handled with patience and authenticity, could lead to meaningful connections and lasting improvements. 3 months after the Flight 2471 incident, Thomas Chin found himself back at Bay Area International Airport. This time, however, things were noticeably different. The terminal buzzed with activity as camera crews set up their equipment, preparing to document the launch of a revolutionary passenger communication system, born directly from the viral incident that had changed his company's trajectory. The new system, dubbed Cloud Connect, wasn't just another airline app. It represented a complete reimagining of how passengers and airline staff could communicate during flights. The inspiration had come from the countless messages Thomas received after the incident, with travelers sharing their own stories of misunderstandings and missed connections. As Thomas walked through the terminal, he spotted a familiar face. Sandra Rodriguez, now promoted to lead flight service manager, was training a group of new flight attendants. She was using her experience from Flight 2471 to teach them about the importance of staying calm under pressure and the value of clear communication. "The thing is," Sandra explained to her attentive audience, "we're not just serving drinks and demonstrating safety procedures. We're creating an environment where every passenger feels heard and understood." Her words carried the wisdom of someone who had turned a potentially volatile situation into a teaching moment. The morning's press conference attracted aviation journalists from across the country. Among them was Priya Kapoor, a respected industry analyst who had been following the story since it first went viral. She was particularly interested in how a single misunderstanding had sparked such widespread changes in airline protocol. Thomas began his presentation by sharing previously unseen footage from Flight 2471, captured by the plane's security cameras. The video showed something remarkable: how a plane full of strangers had transformed from a group on the verge of conflict into a community engaged in meaningful dialogue. What we learned that day, Thomas explained to the assembled press, wasn't just about crisis management. It was about the fundamental human need for connection and understanding. He proceeded to demonstrate how Cloud Connect would facilitate real-time communication between passengers and crew, while also providing accurate information to prevent misunderstandings. In the audience sat Kevin Patel, the airport manager whose quick thinking had helped defuse the original situation. He couldn't help but smile as he watched the demonstration. What had started as a potential PR disaster had evolved into something that could genuinely improve the flying experience for millions of people. The system's first test run was scheduled for that afternoon on Flight 3850 to Chicago. As passengers boarded, they were greeted by interactive screens at their seats, connected to the Cloud Connect platform. The interface was intuitive, allowing travelers to access accurate, real-time information about their flight and communicate directly with the crew when needed. Among the passengers was Dr. Linda Zhao, a behavioral psychologist who had been studying the impact of technology on human interaction. She had been invited to observe the system's implementation and provide feedback from a psychological perspective. Her initial observations were promising. Passengers seemed more relaxed when they had access to clear, immediate information. The flight itself became a living laboratory for the new system. When minor turbulence hit, instead of whispered concerns spreading through the cabin, passengers received instant updates about weather conditions and expected duration. The transparency helped maintain calm and even sparked interesting conversations between seatmates about their shared experience. Back on the ground, Thomas's team monitored the system's performance from a newly established command center. They watched as positive feedback began flowing in through the platform. Passengers appreciated the ability to communicate their needs efficiently, while crew members reported feeling more connected to their passengers' experiences. The success of the initial flight caught the attention of international aviation authorities. Representatives from major airlines across Asia and Europe expressed interest in implementing similar systems. What had started as a local incident was now influencing global aviation practices. As evening approached, Thomas received an unexpected message. It was from a passenger who had been on the original Flight 2471. The message included a photo of their family watching the news coverage of Cloud Connect's launch. "You turned a moment of confusion into something that will help millions," the message read. "That's what real leadership looks like." The day concluded with an informal gathering of the original Flight 2471 crew members, now seen as pioneers of this new approach to airline service. They shared stories about how their lives had changed since the incident, and how they'd become unwitting ambassadors for better communication in aviation. 6 months into Cloud Connect's implementation, the aviation industry witnessed something unprecedented. The system had not only transformed passenger experience but had also sparked a cultural shift in how people viewed air travel. However, this success brought its own set of challenges that no one, not even Thomas Chen, had anticipated. On a crisp autumn morning, Thomas sat in his office overlooking the San Francisco Bay, reviewing the latest data from Cloud Connect. The numbers were impressive. Customer satisfaction scores had soared across all participating airlines, and flight-related anxiety reports had dropped by 40%. But what caught his attention was an unexpected trend: passengers were using the platform to create impromptu communities during their flights. The phenomenon first caught attention on Flight 5892 from San Francisco to Tokyo. A group of passengers discovered they were all entrepreneurs heading to the same technology conference. Using Cloud Connect's messaging features, they organized an informal networking session during the long-haul flight. By the time they landed, 3 new international partnerships had been formed. This organic evolution of the platform presented both opportunities and challenges. Thomas's team, led by Chief Technology Officer Riya Kumar, worked tirelessly to enhance the system's capabilities while ensuring passenger privacy and security remained paramount. "We're not just building a communication tool anymore," Riya explained during an emergency team meeting. "We're creating a flying social network." The story took an interesting turn when Cloud Connect faced its first major test. Flight 7733 encountered severe weather conditions over the Pacific Ocean. Instead of the usual panic that might accompany such situations, passengers remained remarkably calm. The system's real-time updates and transparent communication from the crew created an atmosphere of trust and understanding. Captain James Sullivan, a veteran pilot with over 25 years of experience, later described it as the most remarkable flight of his career. "I've never seen passengers so well-informed and cooperative during a challenging situation," he shared during a pilots' conference. "It's like we've finally bridged the gap between cockpit and cabin." The success story attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Educational institutions began studying the psychological impact of transparent communication on passenger behavior. Dr. Linda Zhao, who had observed the system's first test run, published a groundbreaking paper on how Cloud Connect had inadvertently created a new model for managing group anxiety in confined spaces. However, not everything was smooth sailing. Some passengers, particularly those from older generations, expressed concerns about over-reliance on technology. Thomas took these concerns seriously, implementing a hybrid system that maintained traditional announcement methods alongside the digital platform. This adaptability proved crucial in maintaining universal accessibility. The story took another surprising turn when a documentary filmmaker, Hiroshi Tanaka, approached Thomas with an interesting proposal. He wanted to create a feature-length film about how the misunderstanding on Flight 2471 had led to this revolution in air travel. The documentary would focus not just on the technology, but on the human stories that had emerged from its implementation. During the filming, Sandra Rodriguez, now a regional training director, shared a particularly moving story. A young passenger with severe anxiety had managed to complete their first solo flight thanks to the constant reassurance and information provided by Cloud Connect. "These are the moments that remind us why we started this journey," Sandra reflected, her eyes glistening with emotion. The system's success also brought unexpected challenges from competitors. Several companies attempted to launch similar platforms, leading to complex discussions about patents and intellectual property. Thomas, however, took an unusual approach. Instead of fighting the competition, he proposed an industry-wide collaboration to establish universal standards for passenger communication systems. This decision proved transformative. At a landmark aviation conference in Dubai, representatives from major airlines worldwide gathered to discuss the future of passenger communication. Thomas's keynote speech emphasized the importance of putting passenger well-being above corporate competition. "The sky belongs to everyone," he declared, "and so should the tools that make it accessible." The human impact of Cloud Connect continued to surface in unexpected ways. Flight crews reported stronger bonds with their passengers. Ground staff noticed reduced stress levels during delays or disruptions. Even airport retail outlets began integrating with the system, creating a more seamless travel experience. 1 year after Cloud Connect's launch, the system faced its biggest challenge yet. On a busy Wednesday morning, Thomas Chen received an urgent call that would test everything his team had built. Flight 9221, carrying 287 passengers from New York to London, had encountered a series of unexpected technical difficulties shortly after takeoff. What made this situation unique wasn't the technical issue itself, it was how Cloud Connect transformed a potential crisis into a showcase of human resilience and community spirit. As the plane diverted to a smaller airport in rural Maine, passengers used the system in ways its creators had never imagined. Rita Patel, a grandmother traveling with her young grandson, started a virtual support group within the cabin when she noticed several children becoming anxious about the delay. Using Cloud Connect's community features, she organized an impromptu storytelling session that soon had kids across different sections of the plane engaged and calm. The flight's lead attendant, Carlos Hernandez, later described the scene. Usually, an emergency landing creates panic. But this time, it was different. Passengers weren't just receiving information, they were actively supporting each other. A doctor on board used the system to offer anxiety management tips. A local Maine resident shared insights about the area where we'd landed. It was like watching a small town come together. Meanwhile, in the operations center, Riya Kumar and her technical team worked frantically to enhance Cloud Connect's capabilities in real time. They needed to ensure the system could handle the increased communication load while maintaining stability. "We built this for normal flights," Riya admitted during a tense moment, but today it became a lifeline. The incident caught the attention of the global media, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Instead of headlines about a diverted flight, news outlets focused on the extraordinary way passengers handled the situation. Videos shared through Cloud Connect showed people from different backgrounds coming together, sharing snacks, and even organizing an impromptu musical performance to keep spirits high. Thomas flew to Maine personally to meet the passengers and crew. When he arrived at the small regional airport, he found something remarkable: passengers weren't complaining about the delay. Instead, they were exchanging contact information, making plans to stay in touch, and sharing stories about their unique experience. One passenger, a business executive named Ahmed Al-Rahman, approached Thomas with an unexpected proposition. He wanted to adapt Cloud Connect's community-building features for his company's global offices. "What you've created isn't just an airline tool," Ahmed explained. "It's a blueprint for handling crisis situations in any industry." The main incident became a turning point for Cloud Connect. Insurance companies began studying how the system had prevented the usual stress claims that typically followed emergency landings. Corporate consultants analyzed how spontaneous leadership had emerged among passengers. Even psychology researchers requested access to the anonymized data to study group behavior during crisis situations. Back in San Francisco, Thomas gathered his original team from Flight 2471. Sandra Rodriguez, who had since become a leading voice in airline customer experience, shared her perspective. "We thought we were building a communication system, but we actually created a platform for human connection. That's something no amount of technology can replace." The story took another interesting turn when a group of passengers from Flight 9221 organized a reunion 6 months later. They chose the same small Maine airport where they had landed, transforming it into a celebration of their shared experience. Local residents, who had helped during the emergency landing, joined the gathering, creating new bonds between the community and the airline industry. Cloud Connect's success in handling the main incident led to unexpected developments in other fields. Emergency response teams began adapting the system's principles for natural disaster management. Schools incorporated elements of the platform into their crisis communication plans. Even cruise ships started implementing similar systems for their passengers. The human element of the story continued to resonate. Captain Lisa Chen, no relation to Thomas, who piloted Flight 9221, spoke at an international aviation conference about how Cloud Connect had changed the dynamics of crisis management in the air. "In my 20 years of flying, I've never felt more connected to my passengers," she revealed. "We weren't just a crew and passengers anymore, we were a community working together." As news of the main incident spread, Thomas received an invitation to speak at the United Nations about technology's role in fostering human connection during crisis situations. His speech focused not on the technical aspects of Cloud Connect, but on the fundamental human need for community and understanding in challenging times. 18 months after Cloud Connect's launch, Thomas Chen found himself facing an unexpected challenge. The system's success had caught the attention of major tech companies, and acquisition offers were pouring in. The latest, a staggering $8.2 billion proposal from a Silicon Valley giant, had his board of directors buzzing with excitement. However, Thomas couldn't shake off a nagging concern about the future of what they'd built. On a quiet Sunday morning, he decided to take Flight 1122 from San Francisco to Seattle, a route where Cloud Connect had first been tested. He wanted to experience the system as a regular passenger, to remind himself of why they'd created it in the first place. As he settled into his economy class seat, no one recognized him as the system's creator. During the flight, Thomas observed something remarkable. A young woman with visible flight anxiety was immediately supported by those around her through Cloud Connect's community feature. An off-duty nurse offered breathing techniques, while another passenger shared calming music playlists. The simple act of human kindness, amplified by technology, reinforced everything they'd been working toward. Meanwhile, in the company's headquarters, Riya Kumar was leading a crucial meeting about Cloud Connect's next phase. The technical team had discovered a way to enhance the system's capabilities using artificial intelligence, but Riya insisted on maintaining the human element that made it special. "Our strength isn't in replacing human interaction," she reminded her team, "it's in making it more meaningful." The story took an interesting turn when Flight 1122 encountered moderate turbulence. Thomas watched as Cloud Connect's emergency protocol activated. Instead of panic, passengers received clear, real-time updates about weather conditions. A meteorologist on board even used the system to explain the science behind turbulence, turning a scary situation into an impromptu learning session. Back on the ground, Sandra Rodriguez was conducting a training session for international airlines adopting Cloud Connect. She shared stories from various flights where the system had made a difference. "Remember the grandmother who organized a virtual support group during the main incident?" she asked her audience. "She still receives holiday cards from families who were on that flight." The human impact of Cloud Connect continued to evolve in unexpected ways. A group of regular business travelers had started using the system to organize carpools from airports to city centers. Flight crews reported forming lasting friendships with passengers they'd helped during difficult situations. Even airport staff noticed a change in passenger behavior. People seemed more patient, more understanding of delays and disruptions. Thomas's flight to Seattle proved enlightening in another way. A retired technology professor sitting next to him, unaware of his identity, shared candid feedback about Cloud Connect. "It's not perfect," the professor noted, "but it's the first time I've seen technology that actually brings people together instead of keeping them apart." This conversation sparked a new initiative within the company. Thomas gathered his team to launch Cloud Connect Communities, a program that would extend the system support network beyond individual flights. The idea was to maintain the connections formed during flights, creating a global community of travelers helping travelers. The program's first success story came from an unexpected source. A small business owner who had received crucial advice from a fellow passenger during a flight used Cloud Connect Communities to create a mentorship network for entrepreneurs. Within months, similar interest-based groups began forming, all stemming from connections made in the air. However, success brought its own challenges. Privacy concerns emerged as the community aspect grew. Thomas and his team worked tirelessly to implement enhanced security measures while maintaining the system's accessibility. They introduced a unique verification system that protected user data while allowing genuine connections to flourish. The story gained another dimension when a health crisis in Asia demonstrated Cloud Connect's potential beyond its intended purpose. Airlines using the system were able to quickly disseminate accurate information, prevent panic, and ensure passengers received proper care. The World Health Organization took notice, requesting a modified version of Cloud Connect for global health emergency communications. As pressure mounted from potential buyers, Thomas reflected on the main incident, the countless stories of connections made, and the lives touched by their creation. He called an emergency board meeting to make a decisive announcement. Instead of selling to the highest bidder, they would transform Cloud Connect into a public benefit corporation, ensuring its mission of fostering human connection would never be compromised by profit motives. The narrative continues in Part 7, exploring the impact of this decision and how it shapes the future of not just air travel, but human connection in an increasingly digital world. This section maintains the story's focus on human connections while introducing new challenges and developments, keeping readers engaged with relatable situations and authentic character interactions. The transformation of Cloud Connect into a public benefit corporation sent ripples through the tech industry. 2 years after its launch, what began as a solution to an airline miscommunication had evolved into something far more significant. Thomas Chen's decision to prioritize social impact over profit had sparked a movement that would reshape how companies approach technology and human connection. On a crisp autumn morning, Thomas stood in the observation deck of San Francisco International Airport, watching planes take off and land. Below him, a remarkable scene unfolded. Passengers who had met on previous flights were greeting each other in the terminal, their connections maintained through Cloud Connect communities. The airport had become more than a transit point, it was now a hub of genuine human interaction. The system faced its most challenging test, and Flight 8844 from Tokyo to San Francisco lost all conventional communication systems due to an electrical malfunction. Cloud Connect, running on its independent backup system, became the only link between the aircraft and the ground. What followed demonstrated the true power of human resilience and community. Chief Flight Attendant Yuki Tanaka described the experience in her report. The passengers didn't just remain calm, they actively helped each other. A translator on board used Cloud Connect to help bridge language barriers. A tech expert assisted elderly passengers with their devices. Even children were involved, sharing their games and snacks across the cabin. Meanwhile, in the company's headquarters, Riya Kumar and her team monitored the situation with intense focus. The system was handling an unprecedented load as passengers, crew, and ground staff all communicated simultaneously. "This is beyond what we designed it for," Riya noted, "but the human element is making it work." The story took an unexpected turn when passengers on Flight 8844 began using Cloud Connect to organize their own support network. They created virtual chat rooms based on needs, one for medical support, another for technical assistance, and even one for entertainment to keep spirits high during the tense situation. Dr. Anna Chen, a psychology professor on board, and no relation to Thomas, later published a paper about the incident. "What we witnessed wasn't just crisis management," she wrote. "It was the emergence of a spontaneous, technology-enabled community that transcended cultural and language barriers." Back on the ground, Thomas received an urgent call from the United Nations. They were interested in adapting Cloud Connect's community-building features for refugee camps and disaster relief efforts. The system that had started as an airline communication tool was now being considered for humanitarian purposes. Sandra Rodriguez, who had been with the project since its inception on Flight 2471, was now training humanitarian workers. "The principles remain the same," she explained during a session. "Whether you're on a plane or in a crisis zone, clear communication and human connection are universal needs." The impact of Cloud Connect continued to multiply in unexpected ways. Universities began studying its effect on social behavior. Corporate leaders looked to it as a model for building authentic workplace communities. Even space agencies expressed interest in adapting the system for long-duration missions. Thomas's inbox filled with stories that touched his heart. A cancer patient who found a support network during their flight to a treatment center. A job seeker who connected with their future employer while sharing an armrest. A lonely elderly traveler who made lasting friendships on what was supposed to be a routine flight. The company launched a new initiative called Cloud Connect Beyond, expanding the system's reach to train stations, buses, and cruise ships. The goal was to create seamless connections for travelers across all modes of transportation, maintaining the human touch that made the original system special. However, success brought new challenges. As the system grew, maintaining its core values became increasingly complex. Thomas gathered his original team for a weekend retreat to reflect on their journey and plan for the future. They sat in a circle, sharing stories from the past 2 years, each one a testament to the power of human connection. A particularly moving moment came when they received a video message from passengers of the original Flight 2471. These people, who had witnessed the birth of Cloud Connect through a simple misunderstanding, had stayed in touch and formed their own tight-knit community. The story continues in Part 8, the final chapter, where we explore how Cloud Connect's legacy extends beyond technology to influence how future generations think about human connection in a digital world. This section maintains the narrative's momentum while delving deeper into the human impact of the system, keeping readers engaged with authentic situations and relatable moments. The story continues to emphasize the balance between technological advancement and genuine human connection. 3 years after the fateful Flight 2471, Thomas Chen stood at the podium of the World Technology Summit. The journey that began with a simple misunderstanding had evolved into a global movement that transformed not just air travel, but the very way people connected with each other. As he prepared to make a groundbreaking announcement, he reflected on how far they'd come. Cloud Connect had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The system was now facilitating connections in ways its creators had never imagined. A recent incident highlighted this transformation when Flight 6337 was grounded in Alaska due to severe weather. Instead of frustrated passengers, the airport witnessed something extraordinary. Using Cloud Connect's community features, passengers organized an impromptu cultural exchange. An indigenous Alaskan elder shared stories of his homeland, a chef taught a virtual cooking class using airport restaurant ingredients, and a music teacher led a multicultural sing-along that involved people from 3 different terminals. The system's impact had extended far beyond crisis management. Regular travelers reported forming lasting friendships, business partnerships, and even romantic relationships through connections made in the air. One particularly touching story involved an organ donor who found their match during a routine flight. Both were traveling to medical appointments and connected through Cloud Connect's health support community. Riya Kumar, now the company's chief innovation officer, had recently completed a global study of Cloud Connect's influence. "We're seeing a fundamental shift in how people view travel time," she reported. "It's no longer dead time to be endured, but an opportunity for meaningful connection." The breakthrough that Thomas was about to announce had been inspired by a letter from a 10-year-old passenger. The child had asked why the sense of community they experienced on planes couldn't exist everywhere. This simple question led to the development of Cloud Connect Earth, a groundbreaking expansion that would bring the system's community-building features to everyday life. Sandra Rodriguez, who had risen to become the Global Director of Human Connection, position created specifically for her, shared her perspective. "We're not just connecting flights anymore, we're connecting lives." Every day, we see examples of how technology, when used properly, can enhance rather than replace human interaction. The story took another significant turn when Cloud Connect's impact was recognized by the Nobel Committee. The system's role in promoting global understanding and peaceful interaction between cultures had caught their attention. Thomas received the news with characteristic humility, insisting that the real credit belonged to the millions of users who had embraced the platform's potential for human connection. As Thomas prepared to launch Cloud Connect Earth, he received an unexpected visitor. It was one of the passengers from the original Flight 2471, now in his 80s. The elderly gentleman shared how that initial incident had changed his perspective on technology and human connection. "What seemed like a mistake turned out to be a gift to the world," he reflected, his eyes tearing up. The final phase of Cloud Connect's evolution focused on accessibility. The team worked tirelessly to ensure the system could be used by people of all ages, abilities, and technical backgrounds. They developed interfaces that could be operated through voice commands, gesture controls, and even eye movements, making sure no one was left out of the connection revolution. In hospitals, Cloud Connect's principles were being used to create support networks for patients and their families. Schools adapted the system to connect students across different countries, fostering global understanding from an early age. Even space agencies were implementing modified versions for astronauts to maintain meaningful connections with Earth during long-duration missions. As Thomas concluded his summit speech, he shared a vision for the future that brought tears to many eyes in the audience. 3 years ago, a misunderstanding on a flight taught us something profound, he said. In a world that often seems divided, the desire for human connection remains universal. Technology should never replace that connection, it should enhance it, nurture it, and make it accessible to all. The legacy of Flight 2471 lived on in unexpected ways. The original crew members had become ambassadors for human connection in the digital age. Sandra still used their story in her training sessions, reminding new staff that behind every technological advance, there should always be a human heart. The summit concluded with a powerful demonstration of Cloud Connect Earth's capabilities. Simultaneous gatherings in public spaces across 6 continents connected through the system, creating what media dubbed the largest human connection experiment in history. People who had never met shared stories, songs, and dreams, proving that technology could indeed bring humanity closer together. As the story of Cloud Connect came full circle, it became clear that what had started as a solution to an airline communication problem had evolved into something far more significant, a reminder that in our rapidly advancing world, the most powerful technology is the one that helps us be more human. The end.